this one.
You're
just
gone
toxic after all that League of Legends, man.
no.
We're not talking about that today. Well, that happened.
Yeah, it sure did.
Cut that out of the final. Like, can you edit that out?
Edit. Reverse. Reverse. All right, and we're live. And yeah, so we're on Facebook. We're on Twitch.
Yeah.
Things are good.
We'll be on YouTube later. You might be watching this on YouTube right now. This is a message to the future. Make sure that you...
I don't know where you're going with this.
Make sure that you have enough drinks, that you don't dehydrate in the future.
Speaking of drinks, I could use a coffee right now. Guys,
What?
I got back from Atlantic City. I was there for 4 days. I lost some money. I lost a lot of nutrition in my body. And I gained some alcohol weight,
When did you get in?
Last night, really late.
Okay.
Really late.
You play any card games when you're down there?
Yeah, I played a little bit. I got a couple friends who are big blackjack guys, and I only play blackjack with them, so they can help me out. I don't play poker. But,
Well, let's talk about another card game. Can you cue us up, please?
Well, you know, there's this esport card game, guys. I don't know if you heard of it, Hearthstone. This is actually the first episode we're going to do on Hearthstone. Episode
heard of it?
episode of what? theScore eSports podcast. I am, of course, your host, Colin McNeil. With me is Josh Burry,
Hello.
Ryan Stratton.
Yeah, I'm here too.
Yeah, okay. So like I was saying, we're actually going to do our first episode on Hearthstone. Usually we're talking about CSGO. We're talking about League. A couple times we've branched out into Overwatch. But today we've got James Kostesich, and you probably know him better as Firebat.
Indeed.
He's a pro. He's a content creator. He's a Hearthstone legend.
Well, he is a legend.
And a
Yeah.
doctor.
Don't say legend like that.
Well, that's how you say legend. That's
can
how
say-
you say
no.
legendary things.
You could say it like the innkeeper in Hearthstone.
Can you do that for me?
You could be like, he's legendary.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
Like,
Okay,
that's
you should
what
do
you-
the whole podcast on that voice.
No, I won't.
And he's actually, guys, going to be in Toronto pretty soon, which is, of course, where this podcast is recorded.
Yes.
He's going to be appearing at a tournament called Pros vs. Joes. It's Hearthstone and Magic the Gathering. Shout outs to Magic.
No.
It's presented by longtimegaming.com. And he's, like I said, going to be right here in the city. I love Magic.
That's fine. Maybe you should introduce our guest and actually get him on the podcast.
I'm going to ask him about Magic. How about that?
Don't
What do
do
you think
it.
about that?
Don't do it. Don't
Without
do
further
it.
ado, guys, we got Firebat.
Hello.
Hi, how's it going?
It's
Great.
going good, man. We're really happy to have you, and we're happy to talk about Hearthstone.
Yeah, it's been too long without a Hearthstone podcast. We screwed it up big time. You know, it was apparently not the right meta for Hearthstone yet, but now we're here.
Well, we're all getting pretty hyped about something specific, guys, which is the new expansion that just got announced, Knights of the Frozen Throne.
Yes.
I got a bunch of questions for Firebat about that, but first I just want to get like your general excitement level / impressions from what little we've seen so far.
Yeah, just a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, we haven't really seen all that much. I think it's really cool that we're transforming heroes. I think Jiraxis is one of the most liked cards of all time in Hearthstone, so it's cool that now it seems every class is getting their, Death Knight variation where they get to transform their hero. So every class now gets Jiraxis, not just Warlock. So I'm not so sure the competitive reality of that yet.
Yeah.
As we don't have enough information, but from an aesthetic point and just like unique ways to play the game point of view, it's amazing.
Yeah, I guess that's an interesting point actually. You said like the effectiveness of the card because we've only seen the one Death Knight card, which is the Deathstalker Rexar card.
Yeah.
Which looks awful. If I'm
okay.
totally honest, I don't think that's seeing too much competitive play. Like even when you do, like I don't know if you guys played around with the Create a Beast simulator yet, or
There's a
you get to
simulator.
build your own. Yeah, there's a simulator. If you go to Hearthstone or you look it on Reddit, and you get to see what happens actually when you use the hero power of Rexar. And so it gives you the 3 beasts. You click your first one, and then you get to click your second one, and you can kind of see the mana cost of the beast you've created. But then you got to factor in the fact that you're paying 2 mana for the hero power as well, and you can kind of see where most of the time it's not really worth it.
It also, I'm interested that you said that you didn't think it's very powerful because when I looked at the card, I was like, okay, so you do get 5 armor, but you have to. It's a 6 mana card. The battle cry is okay against some deck types, but maybe not great against other deck types. And then you're basically playing like a long-term strategy in Hunter, which we just like really. I mean, I feel like it's been a while since we've really seen that work in any way. So, and like you said, the hero.
Push it.
Yeah, and the hero power is like interesting, but paying the full mana cost for both those cards in one card, I don't know. Do you think if maybe it discounted that card by 1 mana or something, it might be playable at that point?
Yeah, that would make it a lot better for sure. It's they want to try and make it all about card advantage, not about tempo, though. If you start discounting the mana cost, then the high rolls on it can get like really impactful.
True.
Or you can get like Stone Tusk Boar plus something with high attack, and now all of a sudden you have like a 3-mana supercharger. So
true.
It's gets into some sort of gray areas where you can start making crazy face hunter-y decks.
Now
so it'll be interesting.
You mentioned earlier that you liked the thing about transforming your hero into a Death Knight, but we didn't get a new hero, which is something people were talking about before this. And Josh pointed out earlier to me, actually, before the podcast, that there's never been a new hero, right? It's got
like a new class.
Class.
Yeah, there have been new heroes.
Yeah, pardon me. And there are obvious reasons why. It's balance, logistics, and all that kind of stuff. But people were saying if there was going to be a new hero class, I mean, Knights of the Frozen Throne, pretty good place to do it. We didn't get it. Are we ever going to get one?
I don't think we're ever going to get one. They would have to rework so many different things because currently all of the cards and all of the classes are balanced in such a way to interact with each other, right? So adding another piece to that puzzle makes it crazy more complicated to rebalance everything, and they'd have to rework cards and deal with all of that. They'd have to change the interface around in certain areas because it's all just set up for this. Even in things like the previous solo adventures would have to be kind of like reworked, and it would be seems like a lot of effort for the amount that they get out of it when they could just add new cards. You know, maybe like years down the line when people start getting bored of the first 9 classes, they'll try something like that, but I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon.
Not to mention like a new classic set that we need for Death. Like if they added Death Knight, right? It'd be like just an immense undertaking to design a classic set with its own themes.
Yeah, and most of the people that play Hearthstone don't play every single day, like, you know, myself. So they come back to the game, and the classic set's there for them to be able to come back and be familiar with the game. Now all of a sudden you start adding new classes. Now people aren't familiar with the game. They have a hard time coming back. League of Legends kind of had that problem for a little bit there, where the original game is so different from what it's turned into now that some of the players that try and come back from it, that tried other MOBAs, can't really get back into it. So that's always a problem with game design and looking at trying to change things up and shake it up, is how much can you get away with changing without making it seem foreign to people that don't play it every day? Because you still want those people playing the game, but you also don't want the people playing the game every day to get bored. So it's a really fine tightrope you got to figure out how to walk.
Well, you mentioned a moment ago, years down the line, you know, if people get bored with the original heroes, do you think that Hearthstone is going to last years down the line? As a casual game, sure, but as a competitive sort of esports scene, is it going to make it that far?
Well, as long as there's people playing the game, I imagine there'll be people wanting to watch the game. You look at the other games, most games have had pretty long competitive runs once they've made it to this point. Like there's still even like StarCraft is competitive now. World of Warcraft still has some of a competitive scene. It's just less, right? So I think it'll, you know, maybe peter out over time. But as long as people are still playing the game, that's really all it takes to create a competitive scene. That's what we've been experiencing in esports right now. Is you look at games like PUBG, for example. It wasn't designed as a competitive game, but people were playing it, people were watching it, and since it became popular, now they have competitions for it. Rocket League had no intention of being a competitive game in the beginning, but people were playing it, people were watching it, competitive scene just happened. Hearthstone, no intention of being a competitive game. People play it, people watch it, competitive scene happens. So since the competitive scene was created by people just playing and enjoying the game, as long as people are playing and enjoying the game, I think it'll stick around.
So they'll probably, I actually agree with that. There'll probably always be a competitive scene. I guess the question is like, how big is it going to get, and how much is it going to contract? Because we've seen esports orgs pull out of Hearthstone, and you know, maybe they, I don't want to speak for anyone, but maybe they see the return for their money, the value for their investment perhaps isn't there. I
can chime in a little bit on this too, I guess, right before we kind of pitched the question to you, Firebat, because we wrote a report about how orgs, and this was actually at the end of last year, but how orgs had a lot of them had left, but then a few had gotten back in. And one of those included Alliance and CLG, and then CLG actually has since left again. But I guess the worrying thing for me is like how will esports continue if we don't have orgs that want to? Like this is kind of what you were alluding to, Colin. Like if the orgs don't seem to have an interest in it, or there's like a fleeting interest, how do we help maintain like a healthy ecosystem where players can get paid, you know, regardless of, you know, because nobody takes top every time. Like that's just the way Hearthstone works, right? Like it's, you know, you can't win every tournament, unfortunately. So what are your thoughts on org interest and whether or not the seeming decline perhaps over the past, you know, 6-7 months has affected the esports scene in any way?
Right. So most of the orgs that came into Hearthstone, you know, had never been in a card game space before. They had never been in this kind of a casual esport. So if you want to call it that kind of space,
right.
They came from, a lot of them came from like the MOBA games like Dota, League of Legends, stuff like that. So they were big orgs from those spaces, and they tried to come to this space and kind of handle it the same way. Try and get sponsors, promise to always win everything, and go out there and try and win everything. And it's not the same kind of game. In Hearthstone, it's all about content creation, managing that content creation, getting viewers. The viewers are really what fuels the whole economy, not really orgs or tournament placements. That generates attention, which allows you to then generate content. But I think seeing the end goal as winning tournaments is wrong. I think you have to see, if you want to see success in Hearthstone, the end goal is seen as being able to create content and have people that want to watch it. So orgs need to change their attitude to be successful in the Hearthstone space. They can't just only focus on tournament performance. I know a lot of orgs came in, like Na'Vi, for example, which didn't require their players to stream. They had the highest tournament winning players in the world. They had Zixo, Hoi, and Surrender from the Korean scene, who was dominating at the time. So they won just about everything. And at the end of the day, they ended up disbanding. And it's because they didn't make... And they also had Osaka, who won Worlds under their brand as well. So, like, they had this Titan lineup, but they weren't able to find profitability because they didn't make any of their players stream. They didn't create content. And people knew these players, but they didn't know them as well as they knew players like Amaz or Savids, because these are the players actually creating content and creating a product that they can market. Right. The whole purpose of anything is to sell something to someone. And you can try and sell tournament victories, or you can try and sell viewership numbers. Tournament victories last like a couple hours per weekend. Selling your viewer numbers, you're putting in 6 hours every single day of the week, every year. So that's just so much more content, and it's so much more value in that if teams only focus on tournaments, they're missing out on 90% of the potential income from Hearthstone, I'd say. Like, it's just so much more worth it to be out there. You got to do tournaments. You got to do your own content. You have to actually be giving something to everybody. You can't just be trying to win tournaments, and that's it.
I think that's a great point, because I think we've seen, like, Tempo Storm, for example, as an organization, has been one that always put a very high priority on content creation, not just in Hearthstone, but in all their esports.
They're from the Hearthstone space. They get it. They started in Hearthstone. They saw how tournaments played out. They saw what happened with that, and then they figured out, oh, content. That's just like winning a tournament. Every day I upload a video to YouTube, you know? So that's really the way you got to do it.
Holy crap.
It's not just orgs that are thinking this way, too. I mean, with this whole NALCS franchising for League of Legends, they're looking at content creation and being involved in the scene that way. They think it's like super very important that you have those things out there.
You're alluding to Riot's criteria for franchising spots, including an emphasis on audience engagement and content creation.
Absolutely, yeah. It's a huge deal. It really, I mean, it's a win-win situation for the organizations out there. They get recognition, and then they get their players out there and stuff like that. And then also for the game, you get, just like Firebat has said, you get more people playing, you get more people in on your product.
I'm going to use that as my personal motto, content. It's like winning a tournament every day. That's
It really is. It is. It's the same exact thing. Like, it's all just viewership at the end of the day. Everything boils down to viewership and the perception of the viewers of you. And if you're making really high quality content, same thing as winning a tournament.
I guess I want to shift gears a little bit, Firebat, and ask about the perception of the Hearthstone community from outside the community. So there was recently sort of a Twitter blow up where Lothar from G2 tweeted about some CS:GO hosts attire and about how he felt it was not totally professional. And that Twitter, it basically became a thread with everybody from both sides tweeting in. It kind of reminded me of the newsroom fight scene from Anchorman, where everybody shows up to fight, and it seemed like at first maybe there was some joking, but eventually it got pretty heavy. There were some
people got salty at one point.
People got really mad. Yeah, it for sure started out as a joke. So Lothar made some dumb comment about people's dress clothes. Maybe it had a point in there, maybe it didn't. But the way he said it wasn't the right way to go about that. You don't just flame someone on Twitter about the way they dress, right? So, he started the fire, and then CSGO community kind of responded, jokingly memeing about how, Hearthstone's not a competitive game, why does your opinion matter? And then from that, it created this window of opportunity for just like everyone to bandwagon hate on Hearthstone, which really gives you some insight onto what a lot of the CSGO players out there kind of feel about the game and how that stereotype is perpetuated, that Hearthstone's not a competitive game, and people just kind of don't see it as like skill-based. So, I mean, that's the internet. People will bandwagon hate whenever they see the opportunity to. It is surprising that it was so much. But so what do we take away from that? We take away that like a lot of CSGO players really think their game is better, and they're cocky about how much cooler they are for playing CSGO over Hearthstone, and that people really do believe that there is a ton of RNG in Hearthstone. Now, even though there is so much RNG in Hearthstone, it is fairly consistent in the top ranks. You look at like Pavel's win rate, or some of the top pros, Zixo, Hoy, his recent win rates. Like, these guys are people that have better win rates than like the top chess players in the world, which is a game without RNG. So it's a little interesting to see where's the disconnect from top level tournament play to the community. Like, it's obviously not healthy to have that disconnect. We don't want the entire player base to believe that it's all luck and it's la-di-da, because at the end of the day, that's going to hurt everybody. If the entire community thinks that the game's a joke and is perceived poorly, then people aren't going to want to make content. People aren't going to want to watch content. I'm not going to make any money. Your show is going to get less viewers. It's going to be bad for everybody. So it's really important that the game is perceived well. And I believe that at the top levels, it is skill-based. I mean, I've competed in it myself for years. I've played at the highest level. I've played and talked with all of the guys at the highest level, and just had like hour-long discussions about really, really minute little points and like 1% difference kind of things. I've made spreadsheets. I've data analyzed the game. Like, I've went really in depth. I paid attention to all of the patches and looked at patch notes for see how it affected how cards flash, so I could try and get more information when people hover over their cards. So like, I've gone really in depth with the game, looking at it inside, looking at it outside, to try and figure out things about that, and other people do so as well. So there's a lot of time and effort and skill put into the game, but the general community doesn't see that. And I think that's very bad that the general community can't see that. And I think there needs to be some sort of change to kind of steer that in the right direction, because I think it will cause negative effects in the long run.
And Firebat, I got to ask you, do you feel, in terms of the community that you're saying that didn't support it overall, is that the community as in anybody who plays video games, or is this the esports community? Like, when people...
This is esports. The people that just kind of play video games love Hearthstone. You know, the people that just like, you get on your Xbox, you play whatever game or whatever, you just download random games on Steam. Those kind of guys that just casually play video games, pretty much all of those guys dig Hearthstone. I haven't met someone that hasn't, really. It's just like so accessible and easy to get into. But the people that are hardcore in esports, they feel that because Hearthstone has so much luck involved in it, that giving someone the same credit that they get is wrong. Like, I've spoken to some CSGO pros before that are like, wow, you're a world champion, but you're only a world champion in Hearthstone, so it's not even a big deal. And they're offended by that. They're offended that I get that title and that they don't, because they put so much work into their game, and they think that I just get lucky in mine because it's some silly RNG card game. When really, I'm also putting in work. So, but I feel bad that I'm making them feel that I'm undeservingly getting a title that they're working their whole life for, you know? So I mean, I don't feel good about it, but I wish that that disconnect wouldn't be happening. I think it's unhealthy. I think the entire esports scene needs to come together and really support each other, because if we tear each other down, we're not going to make it as like a real booming industry. And we have a lot of opportunities right now. So many businesses, so many industries coming into esports, supporting it, wanting to make something happen, tons of money coming in, that if we all start branching out and creating little subdivisions of every single esport and constantly separating each other and not really just embracing video games and coming together, we're going to miss out on a lot of opportunities.
Amen to that, honestly.
Yeah, and I actually want to ask you, Firebat, this is something that Brian Kibler has talked about a little bit, and I'm not sure if you've really addressed it directly, but the idea that this game is more RNG than not, which I think most pros would shoot down. Like if you ask them point blank, how much skill is involved in this game, you'd point to people like Pavel, even Nyria, he's going to go to the World Championship, went from top 8 to top 4 in back-to-back seasons, right? That kind of consistency obviously points to a level of skill. But so if you asked a pro point blank in an interview, they'd probably say, yes, there's a good amount of skill to Hearthstone. But it seems like, and you maybe correct me if I'm wrong here, but when I see a pro go out in a tournament, sometimes you see the rant on Twitter about the RNG, never lucky, drew patches, so GG, I guess. And, you know, it's like, it's really, I feel like that kind of does damage to the esport. And that was sort of what Kibler was getting at. What are your thoughts on how the public conduct of pro players in the Hearthstone esports scene affects the perception of the game outside of it?
Yeah, I think the public conduct of the players really hurts the scene. I think a lot of players just don't get it. They just don't get that they're something bigger going on here. It's not just them and their one time that they get unlucky, or them and they need to, you know, make excuses so they can't just say, oh, that guy just beat me. Like, no one says that. Everyone's got to come up with some excuse for why they lost, because they don't want to feel bad. They don't want to feel like that guy was just better than me. He deserved to win. I've never seen anyone say that. They're too embarrassed by the fact that they lost. But they got to realize, take a step back, look at the bigger picture here. The perception of the game affects their ability to make money playing the game. It affects their ability to make money off their content. It affects everything about them if they want to do this full time, if they want to be a professional player, which a lot of them are on orgs and they're committed to trying to become a professional player. They do this full time. They stream every single day. The image of the game affects your livelihood. And if you're too ashamed to man up to the fact that you got beat and you're going to make excuses and blame the game for your loss instead of blaming yourself, one, you're not going to get better. So already you're hurting yourself there. And two, people are going to look at the game less positively, and they're going to want to watch the game less. They're going to want to watch you less because you have this negative attitude, and it just hurts everyone involved. So I think people really need to change their attitude about the game if they want to be successful with it. The guys that are always happy all the time, always playing the game, smile on their face day in and day out, and always trying new things and constantly trying to improve, are the guys that get viewers, and they're the guys that make money. And it's really just as simple as that. I mean, I think that's a viewpoint that we've also sort of heard from Brian Kibler. And one thing that really astounds me about the Hearthstone scene is that the casters, and this is something, this is kind of a lead into our future topics, I guess, in this discussion. But I think if you look at the casters in Hearthstone, that is the one place where I don't feel like we see this sort of negativity routinely. Because even if somebody makes a mistake, often there's an examination of, is it a mistake? Could there be some other thing at play, right? Like, because you can't hear what someone is saying, what someone is thinking, rather, when they're playing the game. You know, sometimes people have even said, sometimes I misplay to try and make it look like I don't have a card. Like, there are people who have argued that that is sometimes a valid course of action. So is that when you are casting, because this is something that you have done, how do you maintain that balance of giving the commentary that you know the fans want, but also remaining positive about the game? Because, you know, sometimes you do witness errors. In fact, actually, now that I think about it, you were on the receiving end of one of those errors in HGG. I forget, I think it might have been Thailand that you were playing against. I don't remember. There was just a strong misplay on the other side, and your reaction was priceless. Your reaction. Paladin mirror.
Yes.
I don't remember who that was against, but I do remember that Paladin mirror where he had a 2-1, and I had a 1/1 on the field, and he went face with his 2/1 instead of trading into my 1/1, going into turn 4 where I had Blessing of Kings available.
Right.
And it just blew my mind that he didn't make that trade, because I lose the game if he makes that trade. But people don't like trading down, so he ended up not doing it, and I was able to just like land the kings there and then come back from a pretty much unwinnable spot, and we would have actually lost global games if we'd lost that. So that was pretty fortunate to end up working out that way. But when I cast, I've done a fair bit of casting. I usually just try and put myself in the mindset of the players. So whoever's turn it is, I just pretty much ignore my opponent's hand. Well, not my opponent, his opponent's hand, and try and focus on the game from his perspective and try and say, all right, what is he thinking? Why is he doing this? And everything he does, I'm not saying is it right or is it wrong? I'm saying, why did he do it? So if he plays, some card, then it's like, well, he's playing this card because he wants to set up for this in the future. This is on the back of his mind, and he's thinking about how he's playing around this. Now, the opponent might not even have that card, but that's what the guy's thinking, so that's why I'm talking about it. I don't really think you can really go into detail with if it's right or if it's wrong 100% most of the time. Sometimes you can, and I'll call him out. I'll say that play is just strictly wrong. He's thinking about, I have no idea. Maybe he misclicked. Those happen occasionally, but it's usually pretty rare. Generally speaking, they have a plan. The plans may not always be the 100% best plan for the situation, but you have about 30 seconds to explain what's happening in a way that people understand, and then explain why it's happening. And I don't have the time to break down all the mathematics between every single route that he could possibly take with the entire turn. So I just say the general game plan of the matchup is this. The play that he's trying to make is to set up for this plan in the future, and just kind of go down that process. So it's not even about like inserting negativity or positivity into anything. It's just trying to explain what's happening and what the guy's thinking. And I think that's my kind of casting style. A lot of people have different ways of going about it, but I just like playing the game, and I like being the one playing, so it makes it really easy because I always know what to say, because it's just like, well, if I was there, this is what I would be thinking, and this is what I would be doing. So then I don't even have to think; it just happens.
And that's why I love an informed caster, somebody who knows what's going on, or at least knows what it is that they're trying to do. You become a narrator. You become a storyteller. It's not just this stat beats this stat. It is the narrative of what's going on in somebody's head. It's that omniscient, all-knowing narrator, and he is a storyteller, man. And he does a great job of it.
Okay, confirmed. Firebat is omniscient and all-knowing. Now, speaking of casting, so you're a pro. A player, you're a caster, and you're a content creator as well. I think Josh referred to you as a Renaissance man, actually, earlier in this podcast.
The Hearthstone Renaissance man.
So, I mean, oh man, you're going to like this one. What's in the cards for you going forward in terms of your career trajectory? Are you going to still focus on content creation? Are you going to move more towards the talent side, or are you going to keep playing?
I'm going to continue doing all of it.
All right.
Yeah, I don't want to like pigeonhole myself into doing only one thing, because I've done the whole like streamer route before. That would be the way that I could make the most money with my time. But after about a month of streaming every day for 4 or 5 hours, I wanted to blow my brains out. It was like, I love the game, but I can't do sitting at a desk all day, every day, doing the exact same thing. So it drives me nuts to do that. So I want to be able to have a little bit more freedom with what I do and be able to try a bunch of things. So I kind of just try and switch it up between streaming, making videos, casting, playing, organizing tournaments, and such like that. Up in about a week, I'll be doing the Pros versus Joes tournament. It'll be like an open tournament for anyone that can attend at the Raiders eSports Center. Just kind of help promote that event and do a little bit of casting there. But as far as like plans for playing, I don't really have too many plans for big tournaments that I'll be participating in anytime soon. And I am really thinking about what I want to do for my next Batstone. That's like the tournament franchise I've been trying to build.
Yeah.
So the sponsors keep bugging me. They're like, we haven't had one in a while. We really want to keep this going, get another one out there. So I don't know exactly the date for that, but after the expansion drops, I want to see if I can do something kind of fun with that.
That's a nice problem to have, though. Have the sponsors be like, "Listen,
we want to do
really
more
like it
with
if you
you.
could do another one, and we could sponsor it." So it sounds like a pretty good problem. And of course, a lot of us here in the office are fans of Hearthstone, but also Batstone. And I remember I think it was a tournament. I don't remember if it was the first one where Yogg was banned, and we all laughed, and we were like, "Yes, I want to see this." That was great.
That was the first Batstone. We did a community vote to get the cards people wanted to get banned. So the top 5 cards from the community vote, which always was super interesting. Fiery War Axe was the second most voted card.
Wow.
Which is just crazy to me.
It's just pure value, right?
Yeah, Blizzard calls that card, it says it'll never go away. It's too staple of a card to the warrior identity, but it's one of the most hated cards by the general public in the entire game.
I think the problem with the card, though, is that the warrior always has it in their opening hand.
They
no matter
always
what,
have
right?
it. They really do. It's insane. It's actually almost a statistical anomaly.
I don't even know. Like, how do you play the odds in an odds-based game when that always happens? It's crazy. But I wanted to quickly just follow up to the streaming thing. Just a quick follow-up.
Okay.
A lot of people don't really understand what it's like to be a full-time streamer. And so people say stuff like, well, you're living the dream, you're playing the game, and you're getting paid to do it. Or they say stuff like, or new streamers who are trying to get to that point really overwork themselves, and they try and do it more than maybe they should from a health perspective. So you mentioned the grind and sort of like having to do it consistently and not having other options. Was that the major thing that made you not want to do that as your primary sort of, interaction with the Hearthstone community?
Yeah, I mean, like, streaming was never really my goal, but it kind of got pushed on me after I won Worlds. Everyone was like, you got to really stream and do all this stuff. So I was like, all right, I'll give it a shot. So I tried streaming. I didn't really like it. And then eventually got forced into a situation where all the organizations, all the teams, anyone that wanted to work with me was like, no, you have to stream this amount of hours. So I got on I think it was 120 hours a month contract.
Oof, which, that sounds like a lot.
Yeah, so I streamed. I went through that. I was able to fill out all my hours, but you got to set a schedule and you got to be there every single day like a normal job. So it's like any normal 9-to-5 job kind of, but you're playing video games the whole time. It's supposed to be the dream, everyone says. And I mean, it really wears down on you over time. Like waking up, you do very similar stuff every single day, right? Like you can only play the game so many different ways. So you end up start playing the game in similar ways, and you're talking literally nonstop while you're streaming. So that's 6 hours a day of me playing the same game and talking about the same stuff every day. And there's the same memes happening in the chat, and you have to like read and interact with this chat where most of the time is filled with lots of memes. And if you're new to streaming, lots of toxicity, especially if you're new because you just like won a tournament or whatever. Then people are always like judging you, and they're trying to see like, is this guy actually good, blah, blah, blah. So, I mean, it doesn't get like, I'd say 10 days of 6 hours every single day. By the end of that, you're like, all right, this chat's kind of starting to bug me a little bit. But after 30 days, it really gets annoying. And you'd think like, oh, they're giving you money, they're donating to make fun of you. That's so great. But I don't have the mental strength to do that 6 hours a day every day. It just wears me down. So you get into a lot of situations where a lot of streamers suffer from depression, and they suffer from all sorts of stuff like that because they're just talking so much and putting so much of themselves out there, and they don't really get anything back when they do that. Like there's no, like when you have a conversation with someone, they input to you directly, you can see them, you talk with them, you bounce off one another, and there's that interaction. When it's just you talking and pouring your soul out to the internet, you don't get anything back really. So then
except the occasional baby rage, maybe, like if you pour your soul out, right?
You just get like a bunch of like these text comments and memes, and no one's taking it seriously, which is fine. They're not supposed to. It's the internet. But then after that, you're too tired to want to go out and talk and do stuff and go out drinking or anything like that, because you just spent all day streaming and talking that you just want to lay down and watch movies or whatever. And then you fall into this cycle where you're just like, you wake up every day, you spend all of your social energy on streaming and making videos, and then you go to sleep or watch movies, and you don't actually end up interacting with a lot of people outside of that, because that streaming uses up the same part of you that you use for interacting with people on a daily life. It's just like that same social energy. Because you ever talk to a bunch of people like at some like trip or some family trip, for example, and you talk with your family every day, the entire trip, and then by the end of it, you're like, oh, I just need a break. I don't want to talk to these people anymore.
Yeah.
Like, you get that feeling after streaming, and you just don't want to talk to anybody, and you start falling into a cycle, and I know tons of streamers suffer from it. Like, so many streamers I found, they just overwork themselves. And then that turns into eventually you get burned out on the game because you're just playing the game constantly every day, and then you don't enjoy the game anymore. So then you don't enjoy the game. You stopped talking to all your current friends so you could commit to this, and all you do is lay around and watch movies. And then you start suffering from depression, and that happens to like every streamer at some point in their streaming career. And figuring out a way to balance that appropriately, it's a bit tricky, but it can be done.
Holy shit. Remind me never to get into streaming.
That was heavy, yeah.
He's back from the dead. Holy shit.
Firebat, before we let you go here, before we wrap up, I just wanted to like go right back to the beginning of this conversation and get your thoughts on quickly on what you think, what you want to see out of Knights of the Frozen Throne. Could be like as specific as a card. It could be just like, oh my god, this mechanic needs to die.
Okay. I would love to see more healing in Warlock. So I think they kind of alluded to this with the lifesteal mechanic. It seems very Warlock-esque. We had a Paladin card released with the lifesteal mechanic and a Priest card released with the lifesteal mechanic. I would love some Warlock lifesteal cards just because the control Warlock archetype is impossible to play. I've really tried to make it work in so many different ways, and it's, I think, a really cool archetype of deck to play, the kind of hand lock, Lock-esque style decks, but in standard it's too difficult to make it work, and I think lifesteal has the potential as a mechanic to create some interesting Warlock stuff, and I would love to see Warlock back in the metagame.
Firebat, are you a lore guy at all? Like, did you play Warcraft or anything, or like I can't remember.
I did not play any World of Warcraft. I played a lot of Warcraft 3, The Frozen Throne.
Nice.
So, but it's more just custom games rather than the whole storyline. Like, I did a little bit of the regular game, but the custom games are really where that game's all about.
Okay, I was just gonna ask if there are any specific characters that you hope to see, or any like weapons or anything represented.
I don't follow lore. I don't know. I'm not really a lore guy, or I wasn't much of a reader at all, so I couldn't get behind lore because it's too much reading for me.
There is a lot of reading,
If maybe they had it all as like audio that like told me stuff, then I could get behind it. But like, I almost like failed second grade because I was so bad at reading. So like, me and reading do not get along.
That's fair.
So I don't like lore.
I think they did one audio drama for the last World of Warcraft expansion, but like that's it. So they really haven't done a lot. So
well, there you go, Josh. There needs to be a lore podcast, so it can be an audio.
Oh yeah, sign me up for that. Sign me up for that.
Use that voice again.
You gotta pitch it to the boss. You gotta make sure that he's good with that, and I'll do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Firebat, before we do let you go, is there anything that you want to say that we didn't get a chance to talk about, or like any shout outs you want to give?
I guess just shout out to Noah. He was the one that hooked me up with meeting you guys and doing this. So yeah, other than that, that's about it.
All right. Well, Firebat, don't let those Joes beat any pros at that tournament. Okay. And make sure you lock them down for us.
I'm not even playing. I'm just hosting and casting, I guess.
Okay, right.
I was more just hanging out. So hopefully I get to see some cool people there. If anyone's going to Toronto, feel free, hit me up.
Nice.
I'll hang out.
You heard the man. You want to go? You want to go meet Firebat? Check it out, downtown Toronto, Raiders Esports Bar. All right, man. So with that, we'll let you get back to your Renaissance creations.
All right, take care.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much. Wow, that was a great conversation.
Yes.
I really enjoyed that.
Thanks for bringing me on for this one, boys.
Oh, it's a pleasure. I mean, we know, I knew the first time I came into the office how you just get so excited about Hearthstone.
I love it.
I wasn't even playing Hearthstone when I started here at theScore eSports. I'm a Magic player. And I was like, oh man, I only have a room for one card game in my life, and Magic Online sucks, so this probably sucks. I got into it, addicted. It's a sick game. I'm actually like hyped for Knights of the Frozen Throne, and I gotta rank up. Gotta get it.
Yeah, no, I remember when you started playing it and you were like, I don't want to buy anything, and then you ended up buying some stuff.
I don't
And
even
we
want to
talked
tell you
about-
how much I spent on it.
We talked about like decks you could play and stuff. It's just, I think everybody in the office kind of like everybody in the content section loves this game at a certain level.
It's a blast.
Honestly,
it's so much fun to play.
Yeah.
All right, guys, with that, that's all the time we have for the Score Esports podcast today. Remember, we do this thing every week. Sometimes we do it multiple times. If there is a specific guest you'd like us to talk to or a specific question for a guest, hit us up on social media. Twitter, you can be all up in that chat, that Twitch chat. Spam those memes, as Firebat
And if you
said.
are in that Twitch chat and you're watching some streamers, please be nice.
Be
You
nice
heard it
to
here
them.
from Firebat.
Guys.
It's not as easy and social and awesome as it seems. It's work.
Honestly, I could have talked about the plight of the streamer for like 45 minutes with Firebat if
It's a
we
great
had the
topic.
time, you know. Like
I
it's-
always thought it sounded like a horrible lifestyle, honestly. So it's like, for him to say that, I was like, oh, okay, yes. Like
Yeah.
this, I believe that 100%.
A lot of people want to stream. They want to do that. And they see that short goal, but they don't see it after doing a month, after doing exactly what Firebat just talked about. So my point being, stop the hate, stop the toxicity. Just like on that tip, League of Legends, it says, hint, if you stay calm, you will do better. Like,
It's actually a pretty good hint.
Unfortunately,
not gonna lie.
Unfortunately, Twitch chat not a game.
No,
and
I
you
know.
can't win or lose. I mean, I guess if you get banned from someone's chat, you lose it, but you don't really win.
most people think you win at that point.
Maybe.
All right, guys. With that, that's all the time we have for the Score Esports podcast. For Ryan and for Josh, I'm Colin McNeil saying until next time, GG.
Top deck patches.